Hi, my name is Debbie, and I am obsessed with all things to do with ultrasound. I'm an empty nester who has spent the last 28 years scanning in all different kinds of situations: clinics, hospitals, point of service, emergency departments, private offices, echo, vascular, general, high risk OB, and want to dive down deep into all things to do with technology, techniques, and transformation. It's time we take ultrasound to the next level. Think of this like your little power boost on your commute to all things ultrasound, along your way to the thing that we call work. So pull up a seat, make sure you're comfy, and be ready to be challenged and encouraged as we learn it's all about the frequency. Today's podcast, we're welcoming back David Cernicek. He's registered vascular technologist and registered diagnostic medical sonographer. He's specialized with over 4 decades of experience spanning clinical practice, applications, training, product development, and strategic consulting. David's career began in medical imaging in 1980, where early exposure to emerging technologies shaped a lifelong focus on advancing ultrasound beyond traditional boundaries. He's worked extensively across multiple specialties, including urology, OBGYN, vascular, musculoskeletal, thyroid, and pelvic floor imaging, with a particular emphasis on 3D and multi-planar reconstruction, ultrasound. Throughout his career, David has held senior clinical and leadership roles with multiple global ultrasound companies and has been directly involved in the early development and adoption of 3D ultrasound technologies. His work has consistently focused on improving image consistency, clinical confidence, and patient outcomes while advocating for the health and longevity of sonographers and physicians. Currently semi-retired and serving in advisory and consulting roles, David's present focus centers on the integration of robotic ultrasound, AI-assisted workflows, and 3D MPR as practical solutions to workforce shortages, repetitive work injuries, and access to care challenges. Beyond technology, David is the founder of Choose to Be Lovely, a philosophy and creative project centered on intentional presence, peace, and the human frequency we bring into our daily lives. His work reflects a belief that when caregivers are supported physically, mentally, and emotionally, the quality and frequency of care naturally improve. Please help me welcome, returning as a guest to us, David Cernicek. Today, our podcast is about robotic ultrasound, AI, and 3D multi-planar reconstruction, MPR. So welcome back. I'm so glad to have you back on to share your new information and experience. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself again and remind us why you got into ultrasound and how you got to where you are now.
Thanks, Deb. It's wonderful to be back here with you again. The last time that we talked it was actually last year, back in the spring. For those that know me, I've been in ultrasound for 45, going on 46 years now, and got to kind of grow up with it. It has been something that's been very important. It's been a key in my life and my development, both personal and passion-wise, for sharing what ultrasound is, what it can do, and where it's going. As you know, I'm kind of at a point of life now. I get to focus on sharing the good news of what ultrasound is and watching the new crop of interested people hopefully get excited about it the way that we have been. through that time period, I've done a lot of clinical work, I've done commercial work, I've been involved in applications and sales and product development. And so I've got to witness the growth and evolution of ultrasound from static single slice imaging to real time to the commercial release of color Doppler. I've got to be part of the evolution into OBGYN as a practical use by the physicians themselves and in the office outside of radiology. I've been able to watch the growth and development in other specialty markets such as endocrinology, urology. MSK now is really taken into a world of its own. I see applications growing and developing for specialties such as rheumatology now. I've been involved in surgical ultrasound with one of the companies. So I've been able to really be blessed to watch the development, growth, and evolution of ultrasound. One of the things that I brought that I was experienced with and got to get on the ground floor with was the introduction of three-dimensional ultrasound, which was utilizing specially designed transducers and capabilities to take the 2D imaging that we're so used to and combine it into a volumetric data set like CT and MR, but with ultrasound. So no radiation, no large magnets, very cost effective, but it's had its limited focus over the years. The first company to introduce 3D ultrasound commercially was a company called Kretz Technik from Zip, Austria. Kretz Technik was really some pioneers in ultrasound, going back to the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And they developed a 3D transducer. But when they first introduced it to the United States market, FDA didn't know what to do with it in 1991. They thought they were going to have approval in, we'll have it 6 months. It was 6 years later, they still didn't have FDA approval because it broke some boundaries. So three-dimensional volume data sets at that point in the early 90s were only recognized in the field of computerized tomography. And so here was someone taking an ultrasound and trying and doing basically the same type of things. And the problem ended up being that there was no predicated devices. So with the FDA at the time, if you didn't have something that had already been out, the process was just long and very expensive. That company ended up selling their controlling interest to a company out of Korea, which we all knew as Medison at the time, and then Medison sold that technology to GE.
Okay.
So the 3D that we see with the Voluson and stuff was actually developed initially by Kretz Technik in Austria that ended up in GE's pocket, so to say, as they developed it in the late 90s. But that technology, the beginning of it, I got to be part of the introduction to the United States to look at where it was going, how it could develop. And I instantly saw something beyond the fact that we could generate surface renderings and baby faces, which is what Medison and GE ended up taking and becoming super successful with, as everybody thinks with 3D ultrasound, oh, baby faces. But it goes way beyond that because in order to get the data to do surface rendering, you have to collect just hundreds of lines of information and create an entire volume set, multi-planar reconstruction of all these slices and be able to generate it. Well, in 1991, for us to do just a simple surface reconstruction, the reconstruction process with the computer available inside the ultrasound system at the time took somewhere between about 45 minutes to an hour to reproduce.
Right.
Then the technology got better, got faster. Now we have 4D ultrasound, we have matrix scanning, we have all kinds of things because the technology's gotten better. But what I saw initially was the ability in a single scan, Now, it might take us a little while to acquire the data, and you had to hold still while it did the acquisition. But from that one scan, you now had all of your sagittal, all of your transverse planes. You had any oblique plane that you wanted, and you had a new plane. You had the C plane, the coronal plane,
Mhm.
which gave you a presentation of the data in relationship to the structures in that data set and around it that we didn't have in ultrasound. We had to build those in our mind as we developed. We had to sonographers, as we began learning to what anatomy was and 2D scanning, we built 3D models mentally.
In our head,
So
right?
we had to know if I'm at this level and I see the gallbladder, where's the kidney in relationship to that? I know it's got to go lateral, it's got to go posterior, it's got to go inferior. And
Right.
so you develop this. Well, now we could do it with a scan. And so I saw this and I saw things that I had never seen before. I was able with that seaplane. And one of the things that stood out to me, and some companies are now starting to reach out and doing more work in it, was the ability in evaluating breast lesions. I saw for the first time in probably 1992 at MD Anderson with a radiologist that was there. We scanned a known breast lesion, and so we get the data set from the scan. We look at it. You see all the normal transverse, the sagittal, but then we went to the coronal plane, the C plane, as we come up and we look at that. And for the first time in my life, I saw lateral specula coming out of that tumor in the breast. So you had these finger-like projections coming outward, and you could track them and see how far over they went. To me, that a light went off in my head. 3D ultrasound with multi-planar reconstruction has to be the future for being able to really finally have a fine tuning of the diagnostic capability of what ultrasound could provide. And they've done things with holographic kind of things, and we've done all kinds of things with the data that we get. Um, but we didn't have the computing power to really take advantage of what ultrasound can provide us. That's changing in the last few years, and it's going to change. It's changing almost weekly right now with the advent of AI. So, over the last many years, there's been many companies that have developed ways to incorporate AI into evaluating 2D scanning, evaluating the data that they get, better being able to make evaluations, automatic measurement detections, edge detections, all kinds of things that it can do. Um, the 3D MPR, multi-planar reconstruction, I think it's still got a long way. It's still a great way to go in what it can do. And it's interesting because there are several companies out there that are pioneering and developing ways to acquire that information utilizing traditional 2D ultrasound systems without specialized transducers, which has always been sort of the holdback. Just to develop a 3D transducer that has a motor that moves the crystal through it was expensive.
Right.
And to add just that to a machine and have to have the extra processors, most facilities is, oh, we can't justify that. So why is it getting interest now even more? It's not just the AI, but we're running into some things that are butting heads together in the field of diagnostic ultrasound, in both the ability to provide it to patients, the ability to support it with qualified, experienced sonographers and specialists, and in the availability of reading physicians for interpretation. Big shortage in both physicians to read studies and in sonographers being able to keep up with the demand. One is in the training and the length of experience that it takes to get there, but the other is the impact of work-related injuries, repeat injuries from musculoskeletal damage, from wrist, elbows, shoulders, necks, backs. It has a huge impact. And all the studies, I just put together a study for a company that I was consulting with, looking at the data that has been compiled. And it really is eye-opening again to realize that about 70 to 80% of sonographers today are scanning in pain this moment.
Yes.
And that about 100,000 sonographers a year are impacted to the point that affects their job performance. They're injured, they're going through treatments, they're getting injections, they're having to go to physical therapy. And that each department dealing with that per sonographer, per 100,000 sonographers that are out a year with this, the impact can be somewhere between about 45,000 to about $160,000 per
Per
sonographer
sonographer.
per department. Okay, so
Yeah.
what
It's
happens when they're not available? Well,
right.
then you've got to try to use temporary services. You got to come down, then the cost go up. And the other thing is the lost time to patient availability. There's
Right.
a growing demand for ultrasound studies, which
Right.
is good because ultrasound needs to be used more.
Right.
It's efficient, it's highly specific, it has so many good things about it. But if you don't have people to do it properly, you don't have educated people or their confidence and experience, then the patients lose out. And then what happens is they get sent to CT or they get sent to MR. Now you've got an increased healthcare cost from that aspect
Right.
because it's quicker and easier. I proposed this question to some experts of friends of mine recently was that, in an emergency room situation, if you don't have a sonographer come in, you don't have the availability to ultrasound, is it, do they just order a lot more CTs just because it's efficient, not because it's,
Safer.
the best, the safer. So those things all fit together. It's all part of the big
Which
dynamics.
point of
So
care then comes into, right? Like
point of care
then
comes
you
in great,
have
and that's been another
ER
wonderful.
physicians and nurses trying to interpret, emergent ultrasounds, which
And
isn't all bad depending on what they're trying to diagnose, right?
well, it's interesting. Well, yes, if there are protocols that are now built into the residency programs and the requirements for emergency room physicians, where ultrasound is key. It is a visual stethoscope, and they are taught fast exams and they are taught specific exams to really focus on the trauma areas and what's really concerned. Um, and they're doing some great jobs. Some of them are just absolutely phenomenal. And the schools are starting to focus specialized courses on that. But then, you know, they're still limited. That's not what they do. They've got
Right,
all this other matters. And
right.
but for emergency use on the spot, to teach them specifically to look for free fluid, to look for other things. Great. So how did this get interest to this subject for tonight, or today, that with the 3D, and you mentioned robotic ultrasound. One of the things with 3D ultrasound that I heard when we first came out with it in the early 1990s, when Kretz came out with it, oh my God, it's going to replace sonographers. They're going to take our jobs away. This was in 1990,
Yeah,
91.
yeah.
And it couldn't be more further from the truth. In my working with companies trying to develop technology and to do things, they realize that the human component absolutely can't be replaced because
I
there are
don't
so
think
many
AI
variabilities.
will replace that
No, it
either,
can't. It
right?
can't. No, no, it's not even
So
close.
AI is not going to replace our jobs. It
No,
will, I think the purpose, I think that we can get behind and get excited about is that it will keep us from getting hurt.
it'll reduce, yeah, hopefully, it will reduce workplace injuries. It will make procedure times shorter and yet get as much, or if not more, data than what we get from a current 2D scanning session. The data is all there in the scan, and it's reproducible, and it can be consistent if the parameters are set up properly. And this will come where the sonographer and the ultrasound specialist will still be primary and in the lead and determinative. Uh, I had a discussion actually with some developers recently where they're finally they're understanding, because it's from an engineering standpoint, they can make a robot. They can make a technology that can redo a repeatable type thing, and can actually interpret the amount of pressure it needs onto skin. Problem is, they can't make up the difference for all the different body habituses, for
Uh-huh.
the different anatomical structures. So
Well,
everything
yeah.
is in a
And so
linear
then
fashion to
that's
them.
where, yeah, that's where we use our physics and our
Yes.
human application to
Yeah.
adjust our machine in order to make that image better.
Our
Yeah, that's the
machine, our
reasoning.
machine called our hands, knowing how much pressure to put in one particular, how to make an adjustment from an angle, a sweep, finding a good window, which we then work out of and piece together sections in our brains so that we have an idea globally what's happening with that entire volume data set. And so the technology is not going to replace humans. You've got to have that impact. However, it can reduce those repetitive injuries. Another area that I think that could have some really good applications in the robotic aspect of it is in interventional procedures.
I was going to say
So
surgery.
surgery, interventional procedures in general. I've done a lot of interventional ultrasound work with physicians, both from the ED departments to doing biopsies to doing surgical work. And the one thing that they all do is that if they learn to scan, they're in a sterile field, the probes have got it covered, and they're scanning. At some point, they either have to have someone else reach in, take the probe, hopefully hold it in the same place while they're doing everything else, and then try to proceed. I proposed the idea that it would be wonderful that if we developed a robot that can acquire 3D data sets, hold an ultrasound, a traditional ultrasound probe, not anything, not a special 3D probe, but it could hold a 3D probe, but any probe, and be able to be where the physician needs it to be. All of a sudden, the probe is fixated in that place at that angle with a guidance, and now they have two hands that they can do their procedure with. And the probe's not going to go anywhere. They don't have to go through that third whole thing. And the system could also do a pre-scan and during the procedure help guide them, and then do a post-scan to make sure that their placement is where they want it to be. And it could incorporate the AI, it incorporate the stability and the precision of robot with AI, with the hands-on expertise of the attending. So those are things that have potential to really, I think, be useful. The question is, what's the cost factor in it moving ahead? As we know, technology keeps getting cheaper and cheaper and less expensive. The first laptop system that I used in the mid 1990s for doing acquisition data for volume sets and for real-time scans for things like stress echo and that, just to get enough memory to be able to do that with a laptop, made that a laptop more than $10,000.
Right, right.
And now my smartwatch has more technology in it
Yeah,
than that computer did in 1997.
right.
So and this is not even a real smartwatch. This is a knockoff for like $35. So so
Well, I
the
do know
technology is going to
this.
get better.
Yeah, with AI, we still have some advances to go with AI.
It's got a long way to go. It's
Yeah,
still doesn't replace the human experience.
Correct. But I do think it's helpful, right? Like I used it on since we're talking about specific manufacturers, I used it on a GE machine
Hmm.
and I've found the more I used it, the better I got using it, like anything, right? But I think it's really going to be helpful for us to use that
Yep.
feature, and especially as it gets better, right? There were some times
Yes.
when I would get a really perfect, what I would call a four chamber view of the fetal heart, and it wasn't saying that I got a good image of the heart. And I'm like, what
Hmm.
can I do to make this better? Because I don't think I can make it better, you know? So adjusting the gain, adjusting, a few other things to see if it would take it. And so it's just a learning curve, right? With anything. And as we get better to use it and it gets better of us using it,
Hmm.
I think it'll be fantastic, you know? But I still think there's some room for improvement, basically.
There's a lot of room for improvement, and it's going to. I use AI in different types of applications, and it's always learning, it's trying to figure things out. But it doesn't have the reasoning ability or the experience ability that we do. And for example, just talking about being able to make up that difference, you can take uh, one of the things I think that's going to be very capable and helpful in is doing things like edge detection and automatic measurements. That's going to shorten the things. So if you've got a good image of a fetal head, it's quite easy for the system to be able to identify the edge of the skull and be able to do BPD and OFDs and other things that is necessary.
And I have
But someone
seen
still has
great
to put that
improvement.
into, yeah,
I have seen
it's been great improvement, and
great
it's going to get
improvement.
better. It's going to get better. One of the fields that I've worked in over the last several years is working with newer specialists like endocrinologists doing thyroid procedures for ablation therapies and things, and you know, so you get specialists that are not ultrasonographers, that are not ultrasound specialists, and they go to measure, whether it's the gland or it's a region of interest, it's a nodule, and you see just a tremendous inaccuracy in where they do their placements and inconsistency between they had it scanned here, this doctor scanned it, this one looks at it when the patient comes back, just all over the place.
Right.
3D access of an acquired data set doesn't change. And if AI is doing the measurements, it's always going to be consistent. So whatever you're looking at is going to have greater accuracy if done repeatedly over a period of time where it's learning and we're teaching it to do things the right way. But it still has to take oversight. It's still going to take the human aspect to say, okay, this is good, this isn't good, this is acceptable. Um, and I think it combined with the potential with some of the newer technologies for robotics, I think we're going to see hopefully some reduction in workplace injuries. In my 45 years, I've ended up having injections into my shoulders. I've had elbow pain. I had carpal tunnel surgery on both wrists because I did echocardiography as well as traditional
Yep.
scanning as well. So that wears on you, and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I
you
just
know,
came from a physical therapy appointment.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
And literally, when we think that and I've seen one study that suggested that 80% is low on the sonographers that scan in pain on a daily basis. That is probably closer to 85 or 90% of
I
us
read
have pain every
once,
day.
yeah, I read one statistic that said 95% of ultrasound people will leave the field with an injury.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is outstanding of a statistic, right? Like
So we lose
sign up to
when
do this job, and that
when
was
someone
the result.
retires early or they leave the field early, that's a huge gap of experience. Well, what if we could combine their years of experience and their knowledge of ultrasound anatomy, physiology, scanning techniques, and incorporate that where they're controlling robotic and AI to be able to acquire that. Now all of a sudden you're not losing all those years of experience and those built up memories. You're able to now still utilize that person and not force them out of a field that it probably at one time they loved and now maybe even hate because it hurt them so much to reach that point where they have to walk away physically and emotionally.
Right.
And so if we can still keep those people involved and passionate about why they got into ultrasound to begin with, I my hope is that it really blends the best of both of those worlds, and we don't lose those people and their experiences and their passion, and we can, further develop better ways to take care of more people. I also think that there's a really potential for being able to do remote ultrasound in places where you don't have access to physicians or sonographers or people with a lot of experience. There are a lot of places in the world that, we're very blessed to have all the sonographers we have in the United States and in the UK and Australia, and places are starting to try to catch up with that. But there's a lot of the world, most of the world doesn't have the access to the quality of people that we have for ultrasound. And yet ultrasound is still a valuable tool that really changes healthcare in those situations. What if we could get to the point where affordable technology can be put there and remotely across the world? An experienced sonographer, maybe one of these people that can't go back in and scan every day. They've had the injuries, but they could control a few buttons or they could put on a glove maybe. I even had the idea of maybe putting on a remote glove because I'd wanted talking to the
Yes.
engineers and I keep
Yeah.
wanting to grab the probe and it's not
Probe,
there's no
move
probe
it
there.
myself. Yeah.
But if I could do it remotely, maybe that's got some potential future. VR and virtual reality and being able to
Yeah.
control things like that with ultrasound and be able to do it from across the world and have the impact of helping healthcare workers better diagnose, better care, better delivery of care and treatment utilizing ultrasound technology. That's something I really hope to see in my lifetime still.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Right?
Yeah.
I think, recently I did a podcast with someone in Nigeria, and she used 3D and cine clips
Yes.
often in her scanning, because I think she scans someone every 15 minutes or something,
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
livers, and just livers,
Wow.
maybe not everything, but um, yeah, what a impact that we can have with this technology as it grows and develops. So it is exciting. It is exciting to kind of be on the cutting edge. And I love the fact that of your history with it, right? Like I remember too when it kind of first came out, but I remember it by the time it got to GE, right? I wasn't a part of the original
Hmm.
thing. And so it's exciting to have embraced it when GE brought it out and to see how far it's come. And so now to think, oh, wow, now this is new. And let's see how far we can go with this, with the AI and with robotics. Robotics are being used in many surgeries,
Yes.
hysterectomies and many
Yeah.
different kinds of surgeries all over the world. So it wouldn't be unusual to see that across the field to ultrasound as well.
Yep. Yeah. So
So
there's some exciting work that's being done, both from an aspect of utilizing existing ultrasound probes with specialized sensors. There's a company out of Austria that has done some great work, and they've kind of focused on thyroid and some other things. And then there's a company in Israel that's doing some really exciting things with robot and combining the technologies. A lot of super smart people out there,
yeah.
and I'm very I'm always in awe of these engineers that do what they do, and
So can
you
you
know.
share anything of what they're doing with uh
Well, I mean, it's rudimentary. I
robots?
mean, they're out there, so they're easy to. With the robot, they're trying to develop the technology to be able, of course, to grip and hold a probe, but to have it be able to know the right amount of pressure to put to maintain contact, to be able to complete a sweep based upon a predetermined setting by sonographer or somebody there giving you and then utilizing a data set because the 3D data set is just a matter of you scanning over an area and every point is acquired, just like CT.
Right, right.
And so the companies out of Israel, it's called Endocure, is the company down there. They're doing some great work. The company out of Austria is called Pure Imaging, PIUR. They've developed a specialized sensor that knows the exact position of the transducer. They've developed special clips to go onto the probe that can tell all the information, geospatial, and then taking that data set into software and then using AI to be able to do things with. So a lot of this is on just the initial level, and they've been working on for a while. So over the next 5 years, and that's always been my sort of mantra is that in ultrasound in 46 years, about every 3 to 5 years, I've seen huge jumps in technology.
I agree.
And and
I agree.
and I think while AI is here and it's going to have an impact, the technology is not going to change dramatically because ultrasound can still provide us with more data than we're using, just even traditional ultrasound systems
Right,
and
right.
not expensive systems. There's so much information within the signal and the returning signal of an ultrasound scan that it's simply of how do we better define and use all that information. And so the AI is going to help us with that. And I think 3D volume data sets, multi-planar reconstruction, the ability to, within one scan plane, now have multiple, almost limitless angles, oblique angles, um, plane slices to be able to see how all three parts of the three-dimensional work together. I think it's going to have some really exciting impacts to better patient care with ultrasound. And again, I really, really hope that we can find a way, scan ergonomics has been a huge thing for, as long as I can,
Bruce. Yeah.
remember in it. And
Uh,
companies try to develop, their arms or system, but still, it we still deal with, 100,000 sonographers every year losing time at work. Well, that's,
we're
you
going to
can't
a different
replace that.
profession. Some of them
Yeah.
have left the profession because
Oh,
it's,
yeah, exactly.
so we certainly can't afford to lose any, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
No. So I'm excited about this. I'm excited.
I think the future is exciting. It's still, I'm still passionate, excited about getting people into ultrasound and paying attention to it and being used more. We're not going to be able to just snap, flip a switch and all of a sudden flood the field with sonographers. It takes years to develop that expertise and that knowledge base. And at the same time, we're losing quality people that have been in the field for years. They're burned out, they're injured, they leave completely. And if we can combine the newer technology and the advances in the future with their expertise and their knowledge and their passion, I think we can make up a huge difference for those losses and the inability to catch up.
Yes, I agree. I definitely agree. I think it's exciting where we're going. I think it's exciting where we've come from, right?
Oh yes.
I think you
Yeah.
and I can really appreciate that more so than, some of the newer people who, we always used to have to choose harmonics, right? And
Yeah.
now it's
Yeah.
not even a thought.
Well, I think in our last talk, I shared with you about the first time that I saw color Doppler come out,
Right.
and a radiologist that I really had a tremendous amount of respect for told me it was a gimmick and it will never use it in general imaging. Well, maybe he says maybe in cardiology you'll have some functionality. Well, now if you're not using color Doppler for almost everything, you're really not doing your patient a good service.
Right.
And but in 1983, 84, 85 during that time period, he wasn't too far off, but the future was developing and growing. And so there's going to be more uses, there's going to be more functionality. There's limitations to the technology of 3D. Motion artifacts are still a huge impact.
Yeah.
Computers, while as fast as they are and as incredible as the processors are, there's a huge demand in society in general anymore, not just for medical uses, but to create these chips and do these AI centers and all this smart technology draws away from the availability. So it's going to be a really interesting time over the next 10 to 20 years. In the last 40 something years of my life, we've seen more medical advances than in the previous 4,000 years. And
Yes.
so what's going to happen in the next 4 to 5 years, let alone another 40 years? So it's going to be fun and exciting, and I encourage still anybody that's thinking about getting into ultrasound, if
Do
you
it.
really want to be challenged and you want to do something that's exciting, that's going to be cutting edge, that's going to incorporate the newer technologies of the world with still taking care of patients and improving people's lives, ultrasound is the way to go because it is such an impactful art of diagnosing and treating. It's still not used enough, and it's only going to get better. So go ahead and jump on board with ultrasound if you want to give it a try. Just don't do it just because you think it's going to be a quick, easy way to make money because you're not doing anybody a good service if you're only doing it for the paycheck. So, but if you really see what it does and how it impacts people's lives, and I welcome all comers.
Yes, I agree. I echo all of that. I think there's so much more to this occupation than just making money. Um, I have friends who are architects and in IT and attorneys and all sorts of different backgrounds, and yet I still feel like I can come home every night and feel like I've made a difference in
Yes,
somebody's life, right?
yeah,
And I don't know
absolutely.
that every occupation can give you that gift, right?
Yeah,
And
I agree.
I've grown up with this. I have matured. I have changed. I have, you know, as ultrasound and the technology grows, we grow personally. We mature and we learn new ways of dealing with people and technology and changes. And that's one thing that I love about this occupation is that there's personal growth opportunities as well as technically. And it's a group effort. I like that there's this camaraderie that we share with physicians, with engineers, with um, coworkers, colleagues, that we can all come together to say, how can we make this better? Right?
Yep.
Talked
Yeah.
to a colleague today who had just gone to the OBGYN conference in Nashville, heard it was an amazing conference, And she's like, oh my gosh, I just learned so much, and she got excited about doing ultrasound again just by going to a conference
Yep.
and
Yep.
learning a little bit more detail about what she already does,
Yes.
you know? And so was it super new? Probably not super new, but it was just millimeter information that could change someone's perspective or practice or results, right?
Yep.
For their baby in her case, because she works in OB/GYN. So I love that. I think there's always an opportunity to get better, to learn more, to grow. And I think that's what keeps us alive as humans, right? To continue to grow. Because if we're not growing, we're dying, right? Like if you're
Yep.
not getting better, if you're not changing, and ultrasound is the perfect place to do that, right?
Yep.
We grow not only with technology, but personally as well. So, which is a result of your other
Yeah, it's been interesting.
endeavor.
Yeah, I get to share a little bit of how I've gotten through all these years and what lessons I've learned personally that have developed not even just within the field of ultrasound and patient care, but in my personal life. And
Sure.
I've been able to start to share that information through Choose to Be Lovely, which is a sort of an attitude. Anybody that's known me commercially or anything for the last 30 years knows that when they ask me how I'm doing, I always have one response. I always say, I'm lovely. How are you?
Yeah.
And no matter what's going on in my life or how things have happened or what's been happening, my health or anything else, I choose to be lovely every day because that's an attitude that I can control. I can't control what's going to happen when I walk out the door. If I stub my toe, if the flu bug is going to hit, or someone close to me is going to have some personal tragedy or other things. But I can control how I want the day to be.
Right.
I want the day to be lovely, so I choose to be lovely. And once I do that, no one can take that away from me. It's all
Right.
about perspective. And,
Yes.
because in being in healthcare for this many years, you see all the heartache and the tragedy that goes along with it. You see the joys, the blessings, and then you see the complete devastation in people's lives. And so you have to learn to respond a certain way as a caregiver, and that if you internalize that, it can be very difficult. So there are things that I've learned through the years, and it's interesting, Deb, because I'm at a point now because of I can't scan anymore. I can't do that daily thing, but I'm trying to still have an impact on the world around me. Either whether it's learning about these new technologies that are being developed, encouraging people to get into ultrasound, or sharing little things about how you choose to be lovely. I can still do those things.
Yes.
And so, but my first and foremost passion here is to get more people doing ultrasound and to do it properly.
Right. Do
The
it
we
well.
have the education, we have the knowledge, we have the capability, and I'm excited. I think the future, and basically, we're going to have AI guided workflows. We're going to expand access to patients and to caregivers to have more knowledge, to know what they can do with ultrasound, what they can't do with ultrasound, and hopefully reduce pain and stress that goes along with all those things. And boils down to that the technology itself isn't about the future of the machines and what's created. It's really about the future of the people who make the care possible.
Right.
And that just kind of sums it up, is that it really is all about the people. It's about our patients and about the people that are providing that and utilizing the tools available to us. And technology is going to make that better. I may have shared the story in the past when I first got into urology ultrasound, and they started doing transrectal ultrasounds. I cannot tell you how many doctors, urologists that would stick up this finger and say, this is all I need to know everything that's going on with my patient's prostate. Rectal digital rectal exams now are no longer standardly done because why? Technology gave them the ability to learn, to see, to get accurate measurements, to actually know what's going on visually. Same kind of thing. You
Yeah.
know, they're learning that ultrasound also adds the ability, rather in cardiac things. It used to be doctors, all I need is my stethoscope. I can listen and I hear everything I need to know what's going on with that heart. Well, you know, the technologies now help them to be able to see things and know the functionality and the hemodynamics that the stethoscope along for their ears didn't do. And so it's an exciting time. It's going to get better. So it really is, it truly is. It's about the future of the people who are making the care possible. So,
Yes, I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us and thank you for sharing your knowledge and your expertise. And thanks for staying with ultrasound, even in retirement, and
yeah, yeah.
still
Well,
encouraging
I keep
others.
calling it semi-retirement because I just can't see myself sitting on the porch. Although I do like sitting on the porch and enjoying a nice cigar and watching the
That's
sunrise.
right.
But
That's what
uh,
retirement is.
but you know, I can't just do that every day without getting massively bored. So it's just that's just part of the sonographer in me. I've got to be busy. I've got to be challenged,
Yeah.
and that's why I said if you're a person, if you're a young person or a person looking to change life, and you have that curiosity level, that you know that detective mentality where you like to put things together, you like to be physically hands-on, you like to mentally be challenged, take a look at ultrasound. We need people like that, and because you know some of us are getting a little too old to keep scanning every day.
Some of us. So,
Some of us, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
I look
Deb.
forward
Appreciate
to
it.
you sharing more to come as
I
you
look forward to it. I will keep you,
more.
I will be more than happy to come back as updates happen and technology changes and there's little inside secrets I can tell you about what's going on as it happens from around the industry. I'll be more than happy to come back and share with you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you for tuning in to It's All About the Frequency podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Share it with a friend and remember to keep your frequency high.